Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and expert hand letterer, Ian Barnard, American retro design expert, Dustin Lee, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glantz. In this week's episode, we answer a question from regular listener Dave Clayton. Dave wants to better understand what makes a winning design product. Whilst we dig deep into our experiences selling design resources and the nitty-gritty of what's behind a bestseller, there's plenty of food for thought when it comes to selling virtually anything with the aid of good design. Let's get into the show. In this episode, we're answering a listener question, actually, from long-time listener and generally awesome guy, Dave Clayton.
What's up,
Hi,
Dave?
What up, Dave? He works at Astute Graphics. He's been a long-term follower of mine. I believe yours as well, Dustin's. Long-time community member at Design Cuts. So basically, we like Dave. Dave is great.
Yep, Dave is awesome.
And Dave, actually, I'm afraid I haven't got the question in front of me word for word, but he was basically asking, given that we all sell design products, what makes a design product? So at Design Cuts, how do we curate them in terms of you guys? How do you build them? How do you create the best stuff that sells? And I think it's quite a big question. And I know, obviously, the majority of listeners, I think, probably are not selling products, although I know quite a few of them are, and they are trying this as passive income and so on. But I think digging into this stuff will answer a wider question of how do you present your work online? How do you come up with stuff that people are interested in? So I think whether you sell products or not, hopefully a lot of the stuff we dig into will help creatives in general to think about a lot of these issues. So anyone want to kick it off? Because you're all prolific on this front.
I just think one thing that underlines all the products we do is the fact that they help other people to achieve something rather than giving them an end result. So with like Lisa's portrait creator, it's not just here's a portrait of a person, it's you build it up yourself. With Dustin, it's here you go, you can create, retro effects to your work. So I think that's something that I definitely saw when I was doing products that it took off as soon as I produced a product that wasn't a finished thing. So it was a tool for someone else to use was when it made my product successful.
Because it has wider application.
Yeah, and it doesn't have one use, it has multiple uses.
Mm-hmm. And because you're selling to people who are creatives, so they like using tools, they like having options and possibilities. Rather than being constrained.
A great piece of advice I heard was create aspirational images. So when someone looks at it, they should, in the preview images that you show what something does, they should say, gosh, I wish I could do that. And to add to that, I think what most people want, and if the answer to this question is yes, when you make something, it's likely to sell, is when they use your product, if another designer was to see it, would that designer say, how on earth did you do that? That is amazing. Everyone wants to be a star. Everyone wants to get that reaction from people. And when people say, how did you do that? That's a great feeling. And to know you have a little trick in the bag, I think is just an amazing thing for people.
Yeah.
I would say the importance is spending more time and care and due diligence, because as I'm sure you can imagine, we work with many, many hundreds of designers and we get approached by thousands. And there's a lot of people we have to unfortunately turn away. And sometimes they actually do improve and they get to a level where we can work with them, and we're always trying to be constructive. But a very common thing is people will rush out products or work. So again, this does go much wider than just products. The same thing could be said of putting out any kind of creative work, but it's that quality over quantity. I think work with some font designers where they spend 6 to 9 months on a single font, and it's just a beast of a project. And I know other people who churn out a font a week and they're terrible.
Yep.
And the same goes right the way across the spectrum, graphics, textures, whatever it might be. You can tell when time and care has been put into something, and you can tell when someone is just being prolific, but in a bad way, and just churning out poor quality.
I also think people forget to, I know we've already had this episode in terms of client work, but in terms of putting yourself in your customer's shoes, how are they going to experience your product? So if you're making it really easy for them, whether it's how you label your files, how you arrange your layers, is everything clearly marked? It's the finer details that people sometimes often miss, because it's at the end of the day, people want to, when they use your work, they want it to be easy. They want it to be fun for them to use, not something that they have to figure out themselves. Like, how does this work? Where do I find this? I can't even find this file. So you got to make it so easy for them to go from one thing to the next. And as I said, labeling is definitely a big thing. And go to the extra trouble of deleting the stuff out of the document that's not used, like extra swatches, label all your layers correctly.
Have correct layer folder structure.
Yeah, all those kind of things that I know it's a pain sometimes, but it goes a long way, because it makes, your user's experience just that much better.
Try and reduce file size where possible.
Yeah, that as well, which can be tricky, but yeah, you should try and do that. I also think that people need to, I don't know, I have kind of a loose formula when I start any product. I try and think of, is this unique? If it isn't unique, is it a unique spin on a current idea? And then if you can do it in a way that helps people save time, it's in your own style, and if you can kind of cover all of those, then you got a winner. So there's got to be something that makes people feel wow, this is going to either save me time, or I can't get this anywhere else, or this is so cool, I've just got to have it. So there's got to be a hook. But if it's just the same old stuff that you've copied from someone else because it looks like it's doing well, somewhere else, then I don't know. I don't think it's sustainable. It goes back to finding your own style, I guess.
That's a huge thing that we deal with, because we are literally the most curated place. For those listeners who don't know, that's our whole thing, right? We work with you 3 guys because you're the best, but beyond
I love you.
But
I love you,
Tom.
Tom.
You too.
We love you, Tom. We love you.
But in every area, we look to work with only the best people, and a lot of that does come down to unique value. So the people that set the trends, not follow them. And you want the first and the best, not the 50th product which looks like the 49 before it. Because why wouldn't you just go for number 1?
Yeah.
And so it needs that unique angle, or that unique spin, or that original concept. And it's so crucial, because beyond just copying a handful of other products, this goes much wider into trends. And again, this is where I can see this being very applicable to people's general work beyond just creating products. I see products now and I think, you know what, we would have sold that, and that would have been great 4 years ago.
Yeah.
At the start of a trend, when perhaps the quality hadn't exploded so much. But so for example, I don't know, a brush lettering font, for example. So I think back to when that had its heyday, and in the early days there was some which now in retrospect are maybe a bit more average, but at the time did incredibly well, because there was a big rush and they hadn't really been done very well before. And then it grew and grew and grew, so there became more competition, more people doing them. That forced people to up their game. The quality naturally got better, and then it got to a point where now the trend's almost dying out a little bit. And so now if someone comes to us with an average brush font, or even a good brush font, I'm like, well, it's kind of been done to death. So the only way we're going to feature that is if it's an unbelievably good brush font, because nothing else is going to be worth it now.
Yeah.
And so, as I say, that really links to your work, because if you're coming in at the tail end of a trend, you better do it in a different way, or your work better be damn brilliant.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people are going to be like, well, we've seen it all.
Yeah. And to avoid that, just be a leader and don't be a follower. So you never have to kind of live up to trying to, do something better on a trend. Rather make your own trend if you can.
Which is easier said than done.
Of course.
I used to think like I had to like invent like fresh ideas. I remember when I was in a band, I was always like, oh, well, all music must be fresh ideas. Like I can't like be inspired by this Beatles riff or this thing or else that's not right. But I kind of think more of myself now like a magpie, like you're collecting like the shiny little objects you see from all over other people's stuff, whether it be products or whether it be containers or whether it be a book. And you gather all those pieces and then you start to say, what is something that I really want, that I wish was there? And you start to pull those together. So it's following kind of like this path of a trend, but you're collecting the things that you love and it makes something that's unique to you. If that makes sense, that felt abstract as I said that.
It does. I've got another angle of looking at this. I think of it in terms of Venn diagrams. So often by combining two disparate things, the sweet spot where they connect can lead to something unique.
I think that's what happens with like my best selling product out of everything is both the first and second are both Illustrator products, and they were born out my frustration with how hard it was to use textures in Illustrator and your machine to still be alive at the end of it. Because it would drain all the power and everything would just like, when your computer suddenly goes, like the mouse goes this really slowly like a tumbleweed across the thing. So mine was born out like, there must be a better way to do this. And so, out of that birthed a product which then has, been like a stable seller for me for
and feel free to name it, by the way, because I'm sure a lot of the listeners are familiar with your products.
Okay, that one's called Vector Press. You can buy it on all good retailers.
Available at designcuts.com.
And then that birthed another one, which was Aquatype, which was getting vector watercolor effects as well, which was even harder. And
what I'm seeing there with Aquatype is you jumped on a trend, the watercolor trend, but at the early stage when it hadn't been done to death, and you solved a huge pain point. So it's a double whammy.
And the thing is, there was like Illustrator versions, but they were using like Photoshop patterns with inside Illustrator, whereas mine was purely everything was. Oh no, not everything. The final result was something that could be scalable, and that was people who were saying, "Oh, we want something that's scalable." And that was the same with the textures in there. It needed something that could be done and create stuff like that. And
when it was done so well, it looked like magic. I remember looking at it and being like, how is he doing this? And I remember looking and thinking, because I thought maybe I should make something like that. And then never mind. That looks like such a pain in the butt. And I think that's the sign of a good product when people are like, I would rather just pay you $19 than even try to spend the time trying to figure out the mystery.
And what's been really cool is because something I put in is that you could, if you're a type designer, you can get it to give texture to your lettering or your type, and then make a font like a version of it that's like rough and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I've seen loads and loads of fonts that use it, and it's just like I feel quite proud of it because it's become this sort of thing that a lot of people are using, and you can see it in people's work. So.
Nice.
And I've been trying.
Cool.
The problem is, when you're only as good as your previous song thing.
Yep.
Like, great.
Yeah.
And so I've been living under the shadow of how good that was. And that was like 2 years ago. So, and I've
breathed the day.
Yeah. And I'm working on another one, like trying to refine it even more, but it's just, yeah,
Well, and now the game is much higher, like Tom said, because there's so many more people and people are devoting so much more time and you get so many more talented art people that come in that it just becomes harder to even compete. I mean, we do products sometimes. We did one recently where I was talking to Suzanne, who's a designer for me. I was just like, just spend as much time as it takes, like however long that means. And I was like, if it takes weeks, it takes weeks because it can easily take that.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's good. Like, we could complain about it and say, "Oh, I remember when things used to be so much easier." But ultimately, the consumer is getting better quality. It's forcing everyone to innovate, and the market's moving in a positive direction. The opposite of that looks like everything getting worse. and the quality diminishing. So I know it can be frustrating, but it's the nature of everything. It's the nature of business too.
I just throw like a quick trick that kind of prompted me to start Retro Supply. And if you're looking to start building products, this is an excellent way, I think, to do it. I remember going on Dribble, and I would just fanboy over different people's work and be like, oh, that's so amazing. And I remember seeing textures a lot. There was these beautiful pieces that looked like real printed textures. So good. And in the comment, they'd have like 1,000 likes. And in the comments, people would say, amazing, beautiful. Then someone would be like, how did you get that texture? The artist would respond to everybody except for when someone said, how did you get that texture? Someone else would be like, love the whatever. Like, where did you get the brushes? Or did you do that with brushes? Or did you do that with that? No comment. Like, people would feel like it was a secret. And I remember going bananas because no one would share it. Everyone just like ignored those questions. Yeah. So when you see those and that person isn't answering that question, go figure out the answer. Retro Supply was literally born out of me being like, no one's answering this. I'm answering it for myself and selling it. And people want it because people do wonder that. And those people are missing an opportunity that refuse to share how they did it.
And that was also how I was born, me and Dustin in competition, because I was the same sort of position, not like specifically like that, but I wanted to know how to do it for my lettering. And so I created a product that helped me to achieve an effect with the products. And then me and Dustin just sort of like piled in with the products of just like.
I think Ian gave me a couple ulcers. I was like, what is this guy going to come up with this week?
Yeah, but I had the same feeling about you as well. It's like, oh,
I love that old competition, like, and even animosity maybe brewing away. Would you guys ever have been able to predict that you'd now be friends and be doing a podcast together?
No.
Would that have been unthinkable back
Not
in
when
the
I first started, because it was such a struggle. I had that baby on that was born, and I'm trying to pull myself out of things, and I literally felt like anybody doing something similar was taking food out of my baby's mouth, and so that made them my enemy. So Ian was the anonymous man taking the milk bottle out of my child's mouth in my brain. But once I knew that like actually competition doesn't mean people stop buying from you, there's plenty of room for everybody. I've slowly learned over repeated exposure to that happening.
At least there's room for the best.
I think the competition was good because it pushed me to create more and quicker. Because I just can't fathom how I did it, because I was like, we were releasing product after product after product, and I was like.
Every week was a new battle. What's going to be in the Wednesday newsletter?
Yeah.
I've just got an image of you, Dustin, holding your crying, starving baby, being like, damn, that latest Vector press release. Like, it's been the undoing of our family.
Yeah.
This kept happening more and more, and I started to get in my pit of my stomach. I would just start to feel sick. Not just Ian. Ian was, this would happen all the time. I would like get nervous every week. What is going to happen? When is the other foot going to drop? That I eventually just stopped paying attention to anybody. And I just started paying attention to my customers and listening to them, because I just got
that. By the way, that's a knowledge bomb for everyone listening. Don't gloss over that one. Can you say that one more time?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. So if you pay attention to what everyone else is doing, you'll make yourself stressed and miserable. But if you listen to your customers, they'll tell you exactly what they want.
Yep.
And you'll be focused more on making people happy and feel more confident that something will sell, or whatever.
I mean, I believe that that's the first thing you should think of before you start any product is knowing what your your target audience wants. Because I think a lot of people make the mistake, like, I don't know what to make, what's going to sell, how do I know if it's going to be successful? I mean, you don't really 100% know, but if you do know what your audience needs and wants, and as we discussed, like their pain points, their the stuff that they need or whatever they're struggling with, if you can answer those questions or solve their problems, then you've already got a product. Then you don't have to guess. It's there. It's your answer's there.
Yeah. And if you have an established audience, generally you might hear the same question or two over and over again, or request, and that's normally a pretty good indicator.
Or you can go on other, once you find a piece of work and people ask those questions, and like with Dustin, you'll see that sometimes people are willing to share that information, sometimes they're not, and when they're not, that's something that you can then, okay, I'm going to help these people by producing a product for it. Another tip to find info for products is Pinterest, and looking at stuff that really, there's so much stuff on there, but you scroll through it and it just stops you, and you see this product and you just think, that looks amazing, or not product, I mean a piece, and you think, because I literally went through Pinterest week after week going, oh, that would make a nice product.
Oh, me too, yeah. Well, I did it like in stores with the camera, but like, oh, that got my eye. Yeah,
you deconstruct it and think, okay, this is something that someone would love to make, but they don't know how to. And so I would make something for them. And so I would go through the stages. Sometimes it wouldn't work and it would just be a complete failure. But a lot of the times it would, and I'd produce something, and sometimes I'd have to get some outside help from a photographer. A lot of my products featured sort of like flowers and some fruit and some
and like powder, where it's like what was that, paint or ink or something?
Which one? The powder
one?
Powder.
Funny that
powder spelled without an E and a D. No,
but no. I mean, what did the powder consist of? Like, was it paint powder? Or?
Dry. I think it was dry paint powder.
Yeah, that's nuts. Okay, so let's take a pause here, because I know there's a lot more to share, but so far we've been looking at how do you decide what to make, and as I said, this goes for work which could resonate if you're not into products. It certainly goes into products. So you're looking for market demand, which could be stuff which people are asking for, or people are mystified, or they don't know how to do. You're getting requests, whatever it might be. You're looking for either setting a new trend, or if you can see a trend, you're trying to jump on that early days.
Mm-hmm.
You are looking for, come on guys, help me out. What else? What else do we have? You are looking for
time savers.
You're looking for time savers. That was it. You're looking for stuff which fixes a pain point or a problem.
Or something that your customers, I mean, I know this sounds weird, don't even know that they need.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to say next, like something original or unique. So, sometimes you can respond to focus group type feedback. Other times you're just like, you know what? I think this is the greatest idea ever. I don't know if people 100% are going to like it, but you might be surprised when you put it out.
Yeah.
Well, and there's a spectrum too. So you really do have to know, it's a platitude, but you do have to know who your audience is. So for instance, I sell things that are much more towards a rawer side of a product, in the sense that I might sell brushes or textures or sometimes actions or tutorials. Right. Yeah. So a designer that wants to do their own illustrations for a book, say, which happens all the time, would purchase mine maybe to illustrate a book or something like that. Whereas Lisa might go much farther to the other side, where it's someone that, say, is making things for Etsy or things like that. They couldn't draw that themselves. They're using this as a tool because they can't do that. So those are two very different audiences. One is an illustrator that would probably never buy someone else's illustrations to use in their work because they want to illustrate. The other is someone that can't illustrate because that's not the main part of their business. So you really need to know who is the person buying it.
Yeah.
Or you're like me and somewhere in the middle where you just with me, I just like, for a lot of what I do is just like what is entertaining me and driving me forward. Because like sometimes I can see what's popular, but I don't have the drive to create it because I'm just not enjoying it. And so I will go the other way and do something that may not be as popular, but is more enjoyable to do. And sometimes I just have to go that way because otherwise I won't get anything out, because it's just...
Yeah, but you still focus on quality. So even if it's not as popular as the trend, at least your product that you're putting out is still top notch, So that's important. You have to do that.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a trend. Like, I think a lot of people forget. They're like, oh, like, what do I make? What do people want? And some of these people are big designers. I've gone to conferences and met designers with massive followings, and people forget, if you have a following, it might even be a few thousand people. You can literally just go on and say, what would you buy from me? What could I make from you that would be worth something to you? And they'll tell you. You might think that they want like you to make badges because you've done a lot of badges online, but they might say, I want a course on badges, or I want a course on how to start an Illustrator combining shapes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ask people. People will tell you what they want. And
It's
I've
true.
done that.
Yeah.
I've done that and then literally repeated back to them what they want and made that. And it's sold like crazy to my audience. It might not have, been the best somewhere else, but for my audience, I knew it would work because they told me and I just did it.
No, I love this. And this is so applicable to not just selling digital products. If you're selling physical products, if you're selling stuff on Etsy and sites like that, if you're selling courses, informational stuff, like so much of the advice I think in this episode is going to have a broader application. Let's talk for a while, if we could, about presentation and the importance of it. So how you present your products, the preview graphics, presentational graphics, because from what we've seen, and obviously we have quite a lot of data on this, it's the game changer. It's the deal breaker. I've seen a lot of excellent products with terrible previews, which get no traction. And I've seen a lot of average products with incredible previews, which do really well, which for the record, we still refuse to work with because we have our integrity. So we're like, just because they look great, we don't want people to be disappointed when they open them up. But obviously you're looking for both. You're looking to create a product of unbelievable quality. But I always advocate to the designers we work with spending almost as much time on the previews as you do on the product, because otherwise it's like throwing away all the time you spent creating the product if you then don't show it off in its best light. And it's like people generally can't sample this stuff. They can't really try it out. So the only thing they have to go on is how you present it.
Yep.
And
I cannot stress enough. I see so many people create great products and then just rush the last stage. And it's such a waste. Like we've honestly, like I'm going to probably turn this episode into an article and just share it with all the designers we work with, because we're getting to the point where we do two things. We either advise them on how to improve their preview graphics, and a lot of people we've done that with end up actually changing them forever and basically benefiting from long-term sales even after they're done working with us, because it literally improves their sales when they've made these tweaks. Or we actually take this so seriously, if the designer doesn't have time, we redesign their stuff in-house.
Wow, Tom, that's crazy.
We're that precious about it, and we know it makes that much difference that we will get all their product and stuff, and we've got our competitors there who don't even bother like checking the files really, and we are there redesigning their preview images to show off the product in the most accurate, best light possible.
Mm-hmm. And because it's funny, when you say it, it makes perfect sense. But it's funny when people put it out and the covers are just not good or the previews aren't good, because no designer is going to come to a product, see these really bad images, and then go, "Gosh, I wish I could do that," and then pull out their credit card and buy it. Like they have to come see the product and go, "How did that happen? How did they do that?" Or "I so wish I could do that." That's how people pull out credit cards or whatever and make purchases. Yep. So it's funny. And the irony of it is, this doesn't happen as much, but it still does with some people. They're graphic designers. Like by definition, it should be eye-catching and pull people in and convince them to buy. Like that's what designers do for a living for clients. So why would you make it so not good on the cover? It should sell it so hard.
I'll give you an example of someone who obviously isn't you guys, but Sam. No, it's a given that you're all amazing, but I thought I'd give an external example. So Sam Parrott from Set Sail Studios, right?
Yeah.
He does really great fonts.
He does.
And I would say they are some of the best in that particular style, but I also see in an increasing amount of similar fonts where the quality, it might not be quite as good, but it's actually similar in some cases. but his previews are just so beautiful
Mm-hmm.
that it's a no-brainer which one you end up going for,
Mm.
because it just, you see his and it's like, oh wow, that just sparks my imagination. You're like, there's so much potential here. Like, I just want to get using this. Oh, like what a great application that is. So shall we, on that note, shall we maybe do a quick fire round of tips from all of us on, like, literally just bam, 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 kind of fire through them in terms of how to make your previews for whatever it is you're selling more engaging?
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
So,
Ding, ding, ding.
yeah, I'll kick off then.
I have to think.
Use, in no particular order, but use annotations. So call out key features or benefits of what it is inherently valuable about your product. So it could be, with Ian's Aquatype thing, it could be, this is entirely vector. This is much quicker than, regular products that do this. This scales infinitely. This is authentically realistic watercolor effect. All that kind of stuff. You just make that jump out.
I would say your cover, as tempting as it is to cram as much as you can on it to show what's inside the product, is actually doing your product a disservice. So you got to try and really exercise restraint, I think. I mean, obviously, if it's a font, it's much easier. You just kind of have the name of the font. But if you're selling a whole graphics pack full of, 200 illustrations, it's very tempting to try and show as much as you can. And it's about, the first thing you got to think of is that you want to attract their attention, and having something crazy busy is actually not going to attract their attention. So you want it to look beautiful, and you want them to go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Even though it's not really showing much of the set, you think of the personality that you're trying to show of the set. Like what is the feeling you're trying to get across? And try and translate that into the cover picture in the most simple, minimalist way.
Perhaps we could even create our own term here and say visual clickbait.
Yeah, I like it.
Exactly.
Lisa, I want to pick your brain on this, because we've done quite a few of these in-house now ourselves with the cover images. But I always struggle with, you don't want to undersell it either.
Yes.
So you want to allude to there being a lot in it without putting everything in it.
Yes.
Which can be tough. So how do you struggle with that? You kind of want to say, look, it's got this and this and this and tons of stuff, and you want to look further inside, but you don't want to put all that.
Yeah, to be honest, I think sometimes I might undersell my products personally by not putting so much stuff on the cover. But I'm a sucker for clean design, so I'm always going to go for like a more simpler cover. But I think what I try and do, if I'm going to go that route, what I try and do is I've got to make it look as beautiful as possible, that even though it's not saying what's all in it, they still want to click on it because it looks good enough, if you know what I'm trying to say. So, there's two routes. You can either go, there's like 500 million trillion fonts and you're only paying R9, $9, whatever for it. You can go that route. Which is not me. I don't approach things like that. Or you can do try and design it as beautifully as possible to try and attract people to click on it. You just need that click. That's all you need.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, and sorry, I have a tip. I, without fail, while I'm working on the cover, I constantly make kind of screenshots of it and then compare it to the marketplace that I'm trying to sell it on. I kind of put it up against everything else, and how does it look against everything else?
That's a great tip. And pro tip from me would be, when you're doing that, bump the saturation up a little bit, and you'd be amazed at how it suddenly stands out that little bit more.
I actually learned that, which you can translate into graphic design. When I used to do a lot of really small ads for local newspapers and things like that. So you're in a sea of 50 ads. So you want to stand out. I would take photographs of a sort of standard page of a newspaper, and then sort of dot my ad in the middle of it and see how does that kind of look. So you can use that in anything, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just contextualize it visually.
Yeah.
That's very smart. Ian, you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I suppose have clear focus for the product So just a clear theme running through it. I think Lisa does a really good job of this, running through every preview image. So it connects with the last one. I found the ones that like disconnect, each one sort of looks completely different from the next, doesn't draw the person through it. I think, because for me, my process is really weird because I sometimes design the cover when I've only got like the uppercase letters and that's it. I sort of a weird way of working when
I do the same.
I export the font and I make a cover, see what it looks like, make a mock-up. And so and sometimes that works really well because you sort of you're building it like the previews alongside the actual product.
Exactly.
And just sort of thinking of my other ones that are not, for Photoshop and Illustrator, it's normally giving the product a personality. So I did one on wood type, and so I included stuff on the cover that was actual authentic wood type tools.
Yeah.
Not just randomly chucked on there, but actually interacted with the title of it and the image. So it was like a roller coming across, creating the effect on the title. So it's like showing I've got digital tools to give you an analog product. So, and it's that sort of synergy between what it's not and what it is and what it's trying to be, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So those covers have definitely worked better for me, but it's quite hard. You have to be really creative in trying to get it to that place.
You almost want to take the person like on a ride. Does that make sense?
Excuse me? you wash your mouth out, Lisa.
I mean, like it's like you want to take them like they've just entered into this fun house, and you want to take them on a journey like that. A
journey of pure imagination. Quite literally, you do want to spark their imagination.
Yeah, so you got to think of that. It's like you want to. You're selling a product, obviously, but you're almost selling an experience because it's that's going to make them click that buy now button.
That can also apply to your portfolio website, actually, because if they're going to click the hire me, contact me, they want to be drawn through it, not like bounced up and down. Because by the time they get to it, they're like, oh, I feel a bit sick.
Completely. All right, so I'll give you another tip on that note. Have a little conclusion image in your previews and your presentation, so they kind of get woven through the story. You hold their hand, you take them through it all, you fire up their imagination, and at the end you can do like some cute wrap up image being like, thanks so much for stopping by, and like kind of almost a visual summary of everything they've just been through, so it feels like a closing point instead of it being left open-ended, like they've got to the final preview graphic which shows one segment of it and it's like oop, and suddenly it cuts out. It's nice to like round everything off in a warm way that shows your personality.
I like that.
There you go.
Thanks
that
for
was
that
on
tip,
the house.
Tom.
Give that one for free. Dustin. All right.
I have a couple. So one that I'd started doing early that really helps me is I always think the cover should be store good, market good, like physical market. So your cover should look as good as something that you would feel confident printing onto something that would be a package in a store. If it's not good enough that it would be so beautiful you'd pick it up in a store and at least examine it, it's probably not good enough to sell the product. The second thing that very few people do, I think maybe I just do because I'm a nerd for this kind of stuff, is buy some copywriting books. So copywriting is, selling with words. But when you look through copywriting books, you'll find so much of the stuff is applicable to images and things like that. I find a lot of ideas that can be translated visually in that way.
True.
The third is...
That's a very good tip, actually, because I think a lot of people go wrong there. There's certain things that like just work, and they've worked since the beginning of time, since we've started advertising, and they explain these in any basic copywriting book. Here's the kind of image that works. Here's how all this kind of stuff works.
And you know what I love about this stuff, Dustin? Sorry to interject. Is it's very easy to become better than most people. You don't have to become the best. You don't have to
that's
become
true.
a master. But if you read a single short book on copywriting technique, you will probably go into the top 20% of people doing what you're doing, if not better, because most won't bother.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's not hard stuff. It's stuff that people just, I think they don't need to do, or they already know enough about from, yeah. Anyways, buy yourself a copywriting book. It's a joy to have them. And they're so useful. Another one is emotional triggers. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's certain symbols that we as designers or target markets have, that it's like this symbol that triggers so many things in our minds, right? So for me, Futura, when I see Futura used on something, it triggers something positive in me. For someone that does hand lettering, it might be seeing a hand and a pencil in the image, or it might be certain types of nature photographs in the background trigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We have those things that switch our brain on, and we go, oh, they hit it. So if you can hit those symbols or forms that people love,
that your target audience loves, obviously.
Yeah.
that your target audience loves. Yeah. So like with the retro stuff I do, I know there's certain triggers for people that turn people on in a,
No, that's really cool.
So you try to hit on those.
Nice.
Okay, so I got a couple more. Sorry, Dustin.
Oh, I just go say real quick, and if you're not sure what those are, just keep a text file or a notebook or a field notes book. Call it to Aaron, drop in there, and anytime you find yourself triggered, just write it down. Be like, this thing triggered me to do this or to pay attention.
Absolutely. So yeah, two quick ones then. I think make sure that you are showing off everything that your product brings. And I'll give you an example. So recently I've seen quite a few excellent font families. And you look at the previews and they got the cover image, which is like, here's what the font family is called. And then you got the inner previews, which are basically just sentences typed out using the font on different backgrounds. And it's like, okay, that looks really nice. But what they haven't done is they haven't actually got a couple of inner previews being like, here's a look at all the different weights within this font family. So unless you read the tiny bit of text in the description where it's like, actually, this is 48 weights, big font, and that's a huge feature. They haven't, and most people don't read that. They just skim the images. They haven't visually represented, wow, look at how much is included in this.
Yeah.
And we just kind of, we get this all the time, and you just go back to the designer. It's like, you're kind of missing a trick here. Like, we highly recommend you wrap this into what you're doing. So another, like, this is probably the biggest outside of just making it well designed for me. Use mockups. Mock-up applications of whatever it is, whether it's a font or a graphic or physical product or whatever it might be. So if it's a physical product, and it's a poster, show it on a wall, show it in like a trendy apartment, whatever it might be. If it is a digital design product like you guys sell, show it being used and think of real applications. So I know I mentioned Sam earlier. He does a lot of fonts where he'll show it on a band poster or something like that. And we see this a lot where people kind of misjudge it and they get it wrong. So they use it in the wrong application. And that obviously doesn't work. But when they nail it, and that's what really sparks your imagination, where you're like, oh, that looks beautiful. They've used it on that bit of packaging. I could use it in my packaging work. Or they've used it for this kind of corporate branding application. Yes, it would be perfect for my next corporate branding project. And whenever we see people who haven't bothered to create mock-ups, it's like, oh, no, they've got to go in because it's just such a big opportunity to show it off.
I could just reaffirm what you said about the images with, I've actually done heat maps, which for anyone who's unfamiliar, I'm sure Tom's familiar, everyone's here is familiar, but I've done heat maps where you can see where people are essentially moving their mouse and looking on a page. And when you look, just 80% of the time is invested. And I've even recorded people on screens on my site where they do. People don't assume people are going to read the copy. People are going to look at those pictures 80% of the time and then make a buy. Like, that's how important those images are. Don't expect that they will read anything on the description. They will look at only the information on the images.
Yep.
So true. I realize we're getting a bit tight on time between us, but I hope we got time for one final tip I wanted to give. And this is not on presentation, but on just creating a great product. And I think authenticity links so much into quality. So I'll give you an example, naming no names, but you've probably seen like gold foil and stuff like that in a lot of products. And I know there's a lot of people who will, I don't know, get a bit of tin foil and crumple it up and then flatten it out, scan it in, and put a yellow overlay over it and be like, oh, this is gold. I know other people who will invest hundreds of dollars and start painting authentic gold leaf, and just put so much energy into that and then scan that in for a truly realistic effect. The same way I know people faking other types of textures, and I know other people who take a road trip across the country to go to an abandoned rail yard and get authentic textures there. And they weave that into their description as a story, and they weave it into their preview images as a story. And every time I gravitate, and so do customers, towards the authentic one, where you go, you know what, this isn't something that's just been thrown together. This is like, because we're designers, we care about the details. So even if they look similar and they're not wildly different, you always care about hearing about the painstaking work which has gone into getting a truly authentic result.
Dustin definitely done that with his screen printing one, where he went out and got
I literally bought like $800 of screen printing stuff and then photographed all these prints. It was ridiculous.
I was nearly tempted to buy your product then.
Like, I'm sure you could have faked that, right? But people know, and especially when you tell them in your marketing and your presentational images, people love that stuff because they're like, well, if this dude was willing to invest that much money and time and effort, certainly it's going to be a great product, and I'm more willing to part with my $20 or whatever to get that authenticity, rather than me go and follow his footsteps and spend $800.
Yep. Quality is free. Doing that kind of stuff might cost more, but it pays for itself because people love it.
It's true.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not free. It's $800, but no, I know what you're saying though, completely. Cool. So great question from Dave, and hopefully that helped a lot of the listeners. Maybe gave a bit more insight into how we all do things. To be honest, let us know if this was helpful with your wider work, because I could keep going all day about this, and I think you guys probably could too. It's almost too much for one episode. So maybe we could do a follow on with just how to use design to sell stuff. In fact, feel free if any of you want to write that down for an upcoming episode. I think because design can be such a powerful selling tool. And I'm not talking about the sleazy marketing stuff. I mean, literally just making stuff look so beautiful. It's irresistible.
Good idea.
Cool. So that's it from us. And thanks for tuning in, guys.
Bye for now.
And girls.
Adios.
See you later.
Adios. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode, and a huge thank you to Dave for the awesome question. We hope that we were able to shed some light on how to use design to effectively sell products, and hopefully there were some gems from today that you can apply to your own work. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com, or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean so much to us if you left a quick review over on iTunes. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.